I didn't feel angry when I opened the bill. I felt insulted. Because somehow, I was being charged late fees. For a bill they never even sent me. And that's when I decided. If they wanted to play by their rules, I'd play smarter. It started on a quiet evening. My husband handed me an envelope while I was cleaning up the kitchen. "Hey, this came for you," he said. I almost ignored it. Bills aren't exactly exciting, and we're usually pretty good at staying on top of everything. Nothing ever gets overdue in our house. But something about the envelope felt off. I wiped my hands and opened it. The moment I saw the amount, I paused. $83.21 due. Not a huge amount, but definitely unexpected. "Did we forget something?" my husband asked from behind me. I shook my head slowly. "No. I don't think so." The sender caught my eye. Our dentist. That made it even stranger. We hadn't had any recent visits. No pending treatments. Nothing unusual. So where did this come from? I grabbed my phone and called the clinic. After a short wait, someone from billing answered. "Hi, I'm calling about a bill I just received. It says I owe $83.21, but I don't recognize this charge." I heard typing on the other end. Then she replied casually, like this was completely normal. "Oh yes, that's from a visit in late 2024. We recently updated our billing system, and some invoices weren't sent out at the time." I frowned. "Wait, so you're saying this is from months ago?" "Yes," she said, almost dismissively. "We've now corrected it and sent out the updated invoice." I leaned against the counter, already feeling something shift inside me. "So you didn't send the bill back then, and now you're sending it months later?" "Yes, ma'am. The balance is still valid." I took a slow breath. Fine. Mistakes happen. I was ready to let that part go. Until she added. "And since the payment is overdue, interest has been applied." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny. But because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Interest?" I repeated. "Yes, a small late fee. It's already included in the total." Now I wasn't just confused anymore. I was irritated. "Look, I don't mind paying what I owe. But I do mind being treated like I did something wrong, when I didn't even know there was something to pay. This wasn't my mistake. It was theirs. And somehow, I was the one being penalized." I kept my voice calm. "Okay, I understand the original charge. That's fine. But the interest doesn't make sense. I never received the bill." There was a pause. Then, in that same firm, rehearsed tone, she said. "I understand your concern, ma'am, but once charges are posted, interest applies if unpaid. Even if they never told me?" That's what she was implying. I tried again, still patient. "Look, it's only a few dollars. I'm not arguing about the amount. I just want the interest removed, and I'll pay the rest immediately. Simple. Reasonable. Fair." But instead of working with me, she shut it down instantly. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're unable to adjust the balance. However, we can offer a payment plan if that helps." A payment plan? For $80? That's when I knew this wasn't going anywhere. Something about the way she said it. Like I was the problem. That's what bothered me the most. Not the money. Not even the mistake. The attitude. I went quiet for a moment. Then I said calmly, "That won't be necessary." And before she could respond, I hung up. For a few seconds, I just stood there in silence, staring at the bill in my hand. My husband looked at me, curious. "Well?" I smiled. "They want their money," I said. "And?" "Oh, they'll get it." I could have just paid it online. Clicked a few buttons. Done. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. That quiet confidence they had. Like they could mess up and still come out on top. Like I just accept it without question. That's when the idea hit me. At first, it sounded ridiculous. Petty. Completely unnecessary. But the longer I thought about it, the more satisfying it became. The next morning, I walked into my bank. It was calm, quiet, just the way I liked it. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the counter. The teller smiled politely. "How can I help you today?" "I'd like to withdraw $83.21, I said. "Of course," she replied. "How would you like it?" And that's when I paused. Because this was where it started. I leaned in slightly and lowered my voice. "I'm having a bit of a disagreement with my dentist." She raised an eyebrow, already curious. "Oh?" "I was thinking," I said slowly, "maybe small bills, or coins." She sighed softly, like she'd seen this before. "I always feel bad when people do this," she said. Then she looked at me again. "But if you're serious..." She leaned forward slightly. "Dimes would be worse." I smiled. "Perfect." As she started handing me rolls of dimes, one by one, I realized something. This was no longer about a bill. It was about making them feel exactly what I felt. Frustrated. Ignored. Powerless. And by the time I walked out of that bank, I knew one thing for sure. They were about to regret every single cent they charged me. I didn't rush to the clinic. That would have been too easy. Instead, I took my time. When I got home from the bank, I placed the small paper bag on the dining table and just looked at it. It didn't seem like much. But inside that bag was exactly $83.21. Mostly in dimes, and a handful of pennies. Heavy. Annoying. Inconvenient. Just like the situation they had put me in. My husband walked in and raised an eyebrow. "What's in the bag?" I pushed it toward him. "Go ahead. Open it." He did. And the moment he saw the rolls of coins, he paused, then looked back at me. "You're not serious." I crossed my arms slightly. "Oh, I'm very serious." He let out a short laugh. "This is petty." "Maybe," I said calmly. "But it's fair." I wasn't trying to cause a scene. I wasn't trying to argue anymore. They wanted their money. I was simply going to give it to them. On my terms. That night, I made sure everything was ready. I counted the coins twice. $83 in dimes. 20 cents in pennies. And one random coin to complete the exact amount. Every single cent, precise. Because if they cared so much about accuracy, so did I. The next morning, I got dressed like it was any normal day. Calm. Composed. No anger. No frustration. Just quiet determination. When I walked into the clinic, everything felt ordinary. The soft music playing in the background. The faint smell of disinfectant. The receptionist smiling politely as she greeted me. "Hi. How can I help you today?" I smiled back. "I'm here to pay a bill." Simple. Professional. Nothing unusual. She nodded and started typing. "Of course. Can I have your name?" I gave it to her. A few clicks later, she found my account. "Yes, I see the balance here, $83.21. I nodded. "That's the one." She looked up again. "How would you like to pay today?" And that's when I gently placed the bag on the counter. A soft clink echoed as it touched the surface. Her smile didn't fade. But it definitely changed. Slightly. Almost "In cash," I said. There was a brief pause. Then she reached for the bag, clearly expecting bills. But the moment she opened it, everything shifted. The faint sound of coins moving against each other filled the space. She froze for just a second. Then looked up at me. "Is this all coins?" I smiled politely. "Yes. Exact amount." For a moment, she didn't say anything. And I could almost see the realization slowly settling in. Behind her, another staff member glanced over. Then another. The atmosphere changed, subtly, but noticeably. Okay, she said, trying to stay professional. "We'll just need to count this." "Of course," I replied calmly. "I'm not in a rush." And I meant that. I really wasn't. She called over another employee. Now there were two of them behind the counter. Both staring into the bag. Both realizing exactly what this meant. The first roll of dimes hit the counter. Clink. Then another. Clink. And just like that, the counting began. At first, they tried to stay composed. Professional. But as the minutes passed, that composure started to crack. Coins rolled slightly out of place. They had to recount. Then recount again. A small line began forming behind me. Nothing huge. Just enough to make things uncomfortable. I stood there quietly. Hands resting on the counter. Watching. Not smiling. Not reacting. Just waiting. At one point, one of them sighed softly. Not loud enough to be obvious, but enough for me to notice. And in that moment, I felt something shift. This wasn't anger anymore. This wasn't frustration. This was balance. They weren't being yelled at. They weren't being insulted. They were simply dealing with something inconvenient. That could have easily been avoided. Exactly like I had. After a while, the receptionist looked up at me. "We're just verifying the total," she said. I nodded. "Take your time." Another few minutes passed. More counting. More quiet tension. Then finally, she straightened up. "It's $83.17. I tilted my head slightly. "That's not possible." She hesitated. "That's what we counted." I leaned forward just a little. "Then I'd suggest counting it again." My voice was still calm. Still polite. But this time, there was weight behind it. Because I knew something they didn't. I had already counted it. Twice. And I was very, very careful that they started counting everything again from scratch. I took a slow breath and watched. Because this part? This wasn't even the best part yet. The real frustration was only just beginning. They started counting again. This time slower. More careful. More irritated. I could tell. Even though they were trying to stay professional, the energy behind the counter had completely changed. The calm, routine environment from earlier? Gone. Now it felt tense. One of them separated the coins into smaller piles. The other double-checked each stack, whispering quietly to each other. I stood there, completely still. Watching. Waiting. The line behind me had grown longer. People shifting their weight. Checking their phones. Letting out small sighs. And yet, no one said anything directly. After a few more minutes, the receptionist finally looked up again. "This is going to take a bit longer," she said, clearly uncomfortable now. I gave a small, polite nod. "That's okay. I understand." And I did. I really did. Because suddenly, they were the ones stuck in a situation they didn't expect. One of the other staff members leaned in and whispered something to her. She nodded, then looked back at me. Would you mind if we take this to the back to count more accurately? I tilted my head slightly. No problem. Then I added, just gently enough. As long as the total is correct. She forced a smile. Of course. They picked up the bag and disappeared into the back. And just like that, I was left standing at the counter. The room felt different now. Quieter, but heavier. The people behind me weren't just waiting anymore. They were watching. I could feel it. That silent curiosity. That unspoken question. What just happened here? I kept my expression neutral. Calm. Unbothered. But inside? I knew exactly what was happening. They were trying to fix this. Trying to speed things up. Trying to regain control. But here's the thing. They couldn't. Because this situation? It was built on their own rules. Accuracy. Precision. No exceptions. And now, they were trapped by it. A few minutes later, I heard faint sounds coming from the back. Coins moving. Stacks shifting. A drawer opening, then closing. Then silence. Longer than before. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't just inconvenient anymore. This was turning into a problem for them. The receptionist came back out, holding the bag again. But this time, she didn't look as confident. We're still getting $83.17, she said carefully. I didn't react immediately. Just looked at her. Then I spoke, calm and steady. That's strange. She nodded slightly, almost relieved that I wasn't raising my voice. Yes, we checked twice. I leaned forward just a little. Then let's count it together. That caught her off guard. Together, she repeated. I nodded. Just to be sure. I'd hate for there to be any mistakes. There was a brief pause. Then, slowly, she placed the coins back on the counter. Now there were 3 of us. Counting. One by one. This time, I watched closely. Not just the coins. But them. Their expressions. Their hesitation. Their growing frustration. Because now, they couldn't rush. They couldn't assume. They had to do it properly. Exactly the way they expected me to. As the counting went on, something became clear. They were starting to doubt themselves. Small pauses. Second guesses. Rechecking stacks that were already counted. And then, it happened. One of the rolls they had set aside earlier was slightly off. Not by much. Just a few coins. But enough. Enough to change the total. The receptionist froze for a second. Then slowly looked up at me. And in that moment, everything shifted. Because now, they knew. The mistake wasn't mine. It was theirs. Again. I didn't say anything. Didn't need to. I just stood there. Waiting. Letting the silence do the work. Finally, she cleared her throat. It looks like we may have miscounted earlier. I nodded slightly. I figured. No sarcasm. No attitude. Just quiet confidence. Because this was never about proving them wrong loudly. It was about letting them realize it themselves. And feel it. Exactly the way I did today. They corrected the total and started recounting everything again. I could see it on their faces now. That same frustration. That same tension. But the best part? They still didn't realize. This wasn't the end. Because what I did next. That's what made sure they'd never forget me. They corrected the count. Slowly. Carefully. This time, no shortcuts. I stood there, watching quietly as they rearranged the coins again. The energy behind the counter had completely changed now. No confidence. No attitude. Just focus, and a hint of frustration they were trying hard to hide. After a few more minutes, the receptionist finally straightened up. "It's $83.21, she said. Her voice was softer this time. More careful. I gave a small nod. Good. For a second, no one spoke. The coins were still spread across the counter. The line behind me had grown even longer. And the entire situation felt heavy. Then she reached for the register. "I'll go ahead and process the payment." And that's when I spoke. "Actually," I said calmly, "before you do that." She paused. Looked up at me. "Yes?" I held her gaze for a moment. Not aggressively. Not angrily. Just steady. "I have a question." She nodded, slightly hesitant now. "Okay." I tilted my head just a little. "If a mistake happens in billing, on your end." I let that sit for a second. "Do you usually charge your patients for it?" Silence. Not awkward. Not loud. Just uncomfortable. Because now, we weren't talking about coins anymore. We were talking about the real issue. She opened her mouth slightly, then closed it again. Clearly choosing her words carefully. "Well, our system automatically applies." "I understand the system," I interrupted gently. Still calm. Still polite. "I'm asking about fairness." That hit differently. For a moment, she didn't have an answer. Not a scripted one, at least. Behind her, the other staff member avoided eye contact. And that's when something subtle shifted. Because now, they weren't just dealing with a customer. They were facing the situation. The one they created. I didn't push further. Didn't raise my voice. I just let the silence do its job. A few seconds later, she sighed quietly. Then said, "You're right, it shouldn't have been applied." There it was. Not loud. Not dramatic. But real. I nodded once. "I appreciate you saying that." She looked at the screen again. Then back at me. "I can remove the interest charge," she said. And just like that, the entire situation flipped. The same thing I had asked for earlier. The thing they refused. Now suddenly, it was possible. I smiled slightly. Not in a mocking way. Not in a gotcha way. Just calm satisfaction. "Thank you," I said. She adjusted the total. A few clicks. A small change. But it meant everything. Because it wasn't about the money. It never was. It was about being heard. About fairness. About not being dismissed like it didn't matter. She processed the payment. This time, with more care. More attention. When she handed me the receipt, her tone had completely changed. "Thank you for your patience," she said. I took it. Of course. Then I paused for a second. Looked at the coins still scattered across the counter. And then back at her. "I hope this helps improve the system," I said softly. She nodded. "I think it already has." And with that, I turned and walked out. No drama. No raised voices. Just quiet resolution. As I stepped outside, the fresh air hit differently. Lighter. Calmer. My husband called me a few minutes later. "Well," he asked. I smiled as I got into the car. "They got their money," I said. "And?" I paused. Then said, "They gave something back too." "Like what?" I looked at the receipt in my hand. "Respect." And as I drove away, I couldn't help but think. Sometimes, the smartest way to win is not by fighting louder, but by staying calm, sticking to your ground, and letting people experience the consequences of their own rules. Because once they do, they don't just fix the mistake. They remember you.